Welcome to another week of Footy Kicking Good. I'm Jamie Moraes, joined on the couch today by Travis D'Souza, Niesha Happel. Guys, thank you for coming down.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thanks, Jamie.
And look, there was an absolute cracker of a game on the weekend, the Crows versus the Suns. I want to know, how did you guys feel about this Isaac Rankine mark? And I want to know your opinions. Was it a mark? Was it a free kick? Maybe I'll throw to you first, Travis.
You can. I don't want to be biased because Rankine's in my Supercoach team, but 100%, I think if it's not a mark, it's just a free kick tackled in the marking contest.
Yep.
So either mark or free kick.
Nisha?
I think I pictured it if the mark was taken in the hands and he held it for the same length of time, they would have paid the mark.
Yeah.
On the chest, I just think they expect it to stay in and they'll call the mark if the ball doesn't spill out. But you can clearly see it's knocked out after he had full control over the ball. So for me, 100% mark.
100% mark. I'm the outlier here because I've watched it and I feel like it's play on.
Okay.
I feel like it's a 50-50 call at best, so they could have paid it. I think there was a Josh Weddle mark last week for the Hawks that got paid that really shouldn't have.
100%
So I've seen less paid and I've seen...
So what are your thoughts on the tackling action when he clearly didn't have the ball and he wasn't even like contesting the mark, you could argue at that point?
Look, I also give a benefit of the doubt to the umpires.
Yeah.
Because it's sort of just like, it's one of those frantic moments as well. You don't really want to blow the whistle if you don't have to.
100%.
And people talk about the tackle, like no one saw that in real time. Yeah. You know, the replay like 3 or 4 times. So give the umpires a break there. And that kind of action happens all the time at stoppages as well.
Can I flip it to you though and say, like, put yourself in the shoes of an Adelaide supporter, right?
Yeah.
It's happened to Hawthorn.
Yeah.
Picture that semi-final, was it a prelim against Port last year?
Yeah.
That happens in the dying moments. Are you saying the same thing?
Yeah, it probably is, to be honest with you. I'm a big believer of, I feel like the good teams have to find a way to win.
Yeah.
And I feel like you can't, if you have to sit there and, you know, pinpoint one umpiring decision. 23 grand final with Brisbane with that play on call.
Yeah.
You know, that's one again. Yeah. But I don't know, it's a hard one because Adelaide supporters have copped this, I think, every year.
The year they missed finals for that was that behind from
Keys.
Ben Keys,
Yes,
and then last year also had Rankine running too far on the MCG against the Pies. So it seems to be just an Adelaide thing, unfortunately.
Be filthy,
So they have every right to be filthy, I feel like. But it's a tough one, you know what I mean? Cracking game, probably the best we've had
I agree. And I think as well, like, you'll always hear from the commentary team with like 3 minutes to go in a very tight contest. They say they're putting the whistles away.
Yeah.
So if you are viewing it as a 50-50 contest, likelihood is the whistle's already in the back pocket and it's not going to get blown.
No, exactly. I completely agree. But yeah, look, credit to both sides because they both look like they're going to be playing finals this year. Like the caliber of the players. Riley Thilthorpe looks amazing. Mm-hmm. The midfield at Gold Coast looks phenomenal. Anderson, Miller, Rao,
And you can argue that Gold Coast always start really well. But I guess this year now, beating Adelaide, who's also an up-and-coming team as well, was a really big win for them.
Yeah.
I still think the Big Test will be playing a better team away from home. And the AFL has given them a very easy fixture, as they always do. Yeah. So we'll see in a couple of weeks. But massive ticks. Like, they've done everything they had to. Yeah.
No, I completely agree. Moving on, guys. Look, I asked you guys to bring something to the table, and I think you guys want to talk about your team. So I might start with you, Niesha.
Yes.
Because I feel like Calrton's at the forefront of like every news story every week because they're always in like a primetime slot.
Yeah.
What's it been like this year being a Blue supporter, I guess?
Those who know me know that I'm diehard Blue, which is...
Have you been to every game, I think?
I have been to every game, yes. And I will continue to go because that's the kind of supporter that I am. Whether I watch it from my seat or with a red wine in hand from the long room is a different story. I will say I got up from my seat halfway through the first quarter of round 1 against the Tigers, sorry, halfway through the fourth quarter and made a big stink and told everyone I was going home. And then just went to the long room and got a nice glass of red instead because my morals say that I can't leave a game early. But no, from a football perspective, it's obviously been very disappointing when you are watching a game and it plays out in the same fashion week after week and there doesn't seem to be any amendments or tweaks or strategy behind solving a very real problem, which is no ability to have outside speed or, shut teams down when they're transitioning forward. And that particularly comes to life in the second half after our energy and efforts have been exerted in a very contested style of play in the first half. that is not a secret. Everybody knows that. You heard Luke Beveridge's address to his side in round 3 to the Bulldogs, and he knew exactly where Carlton would be and where the Bulldogs would be at halftime, and he knew exactly where it would be when the game finished. So that's the real problem in the forefront. The second problem is the skills and the players that we're selecting in our best 22 that can't hit a 15-metre kick, short pass on a 45-degree angle and make it easy for the receiver. It's either over their head, at their feet. It's putting players under pressure unnecessarily. There is very, very little composure coming from even our top players at sometimes, but particularly that kind of like bottom, I'd say like 12 players. Normally I'd say bottom 6, but I have
sort
to
of
group them.
The depth of the list,
It's lacking.
If you had to, if you could make one specific change, whether it be coaching, personnel, like players on the field, like can you categorize it down to like one particular thing that you need to kind of fix, or is it it's just too many?
It's definitely a multitude of things. In terms of selection, like they don't seem to commit to their moves. For example, bringing a player like Jordan Boyd back in, he's had an interrupted preseason, but we know what he can bring in terms of skill set and his, ability to move the ball by foot. He's probably our best kick coming off the half back line, and I'd say that over Adam Saad. Yeah.
And I think that's one of my main critiques with Carlton is that they have a lot of players that aren't elite kicks. And you look at sides like Geelong, Hawthorn, Collingwood, they're just filled with them, and that's what's made them successful over a long period of time, especially when it comes to those, bottom end kind of players.
Yeah. Anyhow, they bring Jordan Boyd in 1 week. Again, as I said, a pretty interrupted preseason. He plays 1 game, gets subbed. No, he didn't. He got subbed off that game, I think, and then was omitted the following week. It's like you've got to give these guys a crack to settle into the team. He hasn't played with that group, and he's already entering a side that are being beaten in an area of the ground that he's pivotal to, which is that offensive transition. So commit to your moves. If you're going to make a move or include a player, we need to give it time and see it play out.
Yep. No, I agree. The other thing I've been pretty critical about with Carlton is their selections, basically. I mean, you've already pinpointed that. But I always find, it goes back years now, because I reckon TDK, I think, started as a sub in that Brisbane finals game.
Correct.
Matt Kennedy got squeezed out of the side when Adam Chera came out. I thought Matt Kennedy and Matthew Always, I think, leaving the side. Were huge, I think, for the team.
Much bigger than anyone anticipated at the time, for sure.
Yeah. I think Matt Kennedy's role in that midfield was very underrated. I think he complemented the other midfielders really well.
I think so too, because it definitely took pressure off your Cripper, who is that big body in there, by having a secondary body in there. But I think at the time, even personally, I said our major letdown in the midfield is speed. And if you've got to pick between Patrick Cripps and Matt Kennedy, that's an obvious choice. And Matt Kennedy was really, really lacking in a speed department.
I got one caveat here, because everybody wants to write Carlton off. The Hawks were in the same spot last year, They looked dismal compared to how they were able to turn it around. So I'm going to ask both of you, and I might start with Travis first before going to Niesha. But do you think Carlton are a team that can bounce back and make finals in the same way that like Brisbane and Collingwood and Hawthorn all kind of had poor starts and then
bounce back? I want to say yes, but I'm not sure if you've been watching Voss's press conferences. Like, as a supporter after, I don't think he still has that ruthless edge and disappointment that Sam Mitchell did have when Hawthorn were losing. Like, Mitchell came out and said things like, bring your mad guards to training, this is just pathetic, this is not good enough. I think Voss in his press conferences, if I'm a Carlton supporter, and I'm equally frustrated being an Essendon one, but the way Voss comes out after the game, like doing the same thing over and over again is insanity. The second half fade outs, I'm not sure if he addresses those, like he doesn't instill confidence or that ruthless edge that a Sam Mitchell was doing when Hawthorn were losing. So I'm going to say no. I don't see it happening. I hope it does for your sake, Niesha, but I just don't see it the way Voss is speaking after games.
No, and I have to agree, and it is down to Voss and the coaching team, but for a different reason. I don't think Sam Mitchell and Michael Voss are comparable in their way their brains operate when they think about football. Sam Mitchell, and it comes naturally to him. He wants to look at every individual player and see how he can use their skill set and their individuality to his advantage to then form a team that is covering every, component of the ground and coming together to achieve that one goal. Voss wants 22 duplicates of himself from 2003 out on the field, and he doesn't know how to coach and get the best out of the individuals.
Yeah. No,
and I think that's different. He's not looking at it from a whole field perspective.
Yeah.
He's going, if we can win the contest, we'll win a game.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think it's a big list management issue. I feel like, look, I could talk specifically for the Hawks because I've watched them, progress and win 3 in a row and everything like that. And I felt like every player on the ground had a weapon to them. I don't see that with a lot of players, on the Blues list.
I agree.
But it's a really tough one. I still think they've got the talent there, and I feel like Harry comes back in, Elijah Hollands comes back in. You get one win under your belt and maybe the confidence going. I also feel like I've always said Carlton's not a team that plays well under pressure.
No.
Yeah? And I feel like when the pressure actually comes, I think the only time I've really seen them play well under pressure was that that final against Melbourne.
Yeah.
Where I thought like Melbourne probably should have won that. But
and probably a period of games led up to that result. We had quite a lot of close finishes heading into that final series and kind of went on that. I think we ended up with a 9-game winning streak and then lost that final game to GWS. But a lot of them were very close games as well.
Yeah. No, they're definitely underperforming, I feel like, for what they have. But I feel like their list has taken a bit of a hit. And you've still got a decent injury list as well.
Yeah.
I'd love to see Chincotta come back in because I feel like he played a really big role.
Even Nick Newman, he was like a good kick off the half.
Yeah, I mean, that's
a massive loss.
That's a massive loss, yeah.
Yep.
Transition off the back line is so important in the modern game, and I feel like Carlton currently don't have that.
No.
Yeah. But let's move on to your mob, Travis, because when we did the Essendon episode earlier in the year, you weren't all that thrilled at the prospects heading into this year.
No.
Now, obviously, you've lost 2 games to the Hawks and to the Crows, who are looking like genuine top 8 sides.
Agree.
But you were able to get up over Port Adelaide. So how are you feeling now? Like, what do you think the ceiling is for this side in 2025?
Like I said going into the season, probably on this podcast too, that I expect us to finish 10 to 14th, but I'm happy with that as long as we're playing the kids and getting some games into them. Like Essendon's biggest problem, I still think it's like a culture-based problem. We get in the draft picks. Like, look at like Harrison Jones, Archer, Reed, all those sort of guys who are coming and they're not developing enough.
Yeah.
And then I just see moves like in the preseason. I said it on this podcast. Why are you playing Dylan Shield, who is probably the worst kick I've ever seen, off the half back line? And you just said how important transition is in the modern game.
Yeah.
So in the first 2 games, I'm like, fair enough to Hawthorn. We actually had patches where like, oh, we're doing all right. And Hawthorn will be a top 4 team, I think.
Yeah.
Adelaide game was really disappointing just because the way we lost. Yeah. And I just see things like, Dylan Shield in the back line just butchering the ball. He moves into the midfield against Port.
Yeah.
He did play well, but I just think it's time for him to hang it up as well.
Yeah.
He's too old. And that Port game, I don't know if you guys have watched it, one of the worst games of footy I've ever seen.
It wasn't. It was
a horrible game to watch. I don't actually think Essendon won. I think Port was so dismal. Like I saw like Connor Rosie and Horn Francis just jogging around. Like they just didn't look like they were even trying.
Yeah.
And I think that's benefited Essendon winning. So I think that Port win, as much as I was really happy on the Friday going into work, I was just up and about. I still know that it papered over some cracks because I still thought any other team would have smashed us on that day.
Yeah, and I feel like you've just got this surplus of midfielders as well that you're trying to squeeze in.
Yeah.
So it's like we haven't gone for those real key position players. What do you think the club needs to do to be successful in the future? Do you think they need to clean the list up a little bit?
I think so, and I don't know if these 4th and 5th year players are actually ever going to be any good. Like those high graphics we have, that's another issue. And you said it. I always think besides merit, an Essendon player has the ball. I don't know if this kick is going to hit the target. And you need to have elite kicks like what Hawthorn does. Off that back line, there's no one in the back. Even Ridley this year, he's come back. He's always injured. I think Ridley can be a great kick and he's really smart, but he just hasn't had a long enough run at it to really control that back line.
Would you be a little bit more hopeful on their prospects with Darcy Parish possibly coming back to the side?
Yes and no. I mean, Parish, as I said before, like in that 21-22 season, he is dominant. But again, he's not an elite kick. He is more a clearance player, which I guess like Durham and Caldwell now, they're probably the only 2 that are like kicking on a bit more. Yeah. And I think those 2 will be our main midfield going forward. But we're still lacking when Merritt leaves. And I'll say this now, if Merritt wants to go to another club, I just want to see that guy experience success. He, like Cripper, he just puts that team on his back every week. Yeah. And with that, and I feel so bad for him because I can't see him playing finals anytime soon, let alone winning one. But we need kicks like that. I don't see that. I can't see us going forward without somebody like a few good kicks in the team.
Yeah. So you don't think? Where do you think Essendon are going to finish up? I guess
we think we'll finish 10 to 12th or
10 to 12,
14th. Yeah, and I won't be that fussed, especially since Melbourne are doing bad. We have their draft picks going in. We can go in and top up, but something has to change with the culture in that club.
Yeah.
Do you think with Essendon, and I don't know if this is maybe a smidge of Carlton bias coming out, but they bring these guys onto their list and then they maybe play them more than they should just to try and like prove their point. Be like with a Shield, and you're saying from your point of view as an Essendon supporter, he maybe should consider hanging up, and they're giving him game after game after game. Is that just to like prove that point?
Yeah, because it's same with like even bringing in like Devin Smith and all those guys and giving up picks for back then. We thought we were in a window where we could contend. But when you don't contend, it's like we're in purgatory.
You're going backwards a little bit.
We're going backwards all the time. Like I say this every time, and I hate that you go for Hawthorn. But Hawthorn was so good, they fully went downhill for a couple of years. But now you're already back in the top. Essendon's never. We've just been mediocre, 8th to 10th for so long. Yeah. And exactly right. Like Dylan Shield, why would you even bother moving him to the back line? Yeah. Like what benefit does that bring us? Like bring in some other young midfield or bring in another a young player to play off the half back line rather than just like trying to move him around to prolong his career, if anything.
The other thing is like they'll play those younger guys like Sardis. Like I know Brad Scott spent a lot of time in the media.
How's his time on Grand, Sardis? When he's playing well against Adelaide, he's just on the bench half the time.
Yeah. So he's playing under 70% of the game half the time.
He's on, he had so many clearances. He's good. Just give him a clear run. Last year was the biggest waste of a year.
Yeah, exactly.
He didn't blood any of these guys. Now it's starting to blood him, but they're not kicking on. They're just not kicking on, which is killing us.
Like it took pretty late into the season for him to even put Caddy out and Archie Roberts and stuff like that.
Right, yeah.
So they obviously have done a little bit more of that this year.
Yeah.
But you're wondering if some of the older heads are just taking those spots away from some of the younger guys as well.
Yeah.
In terms of development. And the other one that probably stings is Massimo D'Ambrosio because I feel like every time he has a good game, someone has to bring back that Essendon draft.
What's his key skill? What can he do?
He's a great kick.
He's a great kick, exactly.
Yeah, at the Carlton Hawthorn game earlier in the season, every time Massimo D'Ambrosio had the ball, I was just cringing at the thought of what he was going to do with it.
I was actually sitting on that wing, I think camera side.
Yeah. Across the body.
Yeah, towards the end of the game, he had a couple off the back line. And I was like, Jesus, man, this guy.
And we gave him away for nothing.
Yeah. Well, look, sometimes you let a couple slip, but for Essendon, that's one that's going to hurt. But obviously, I feel like Archie Roberts is going to be a really good player.
He will. But we just got to, again, keep giving him games. Yeah. I don't know if I have to bring up one guy because I don't know if it's controversial because obviously his brother's also not playing now. There could be something going on, but Ben Mackay, I just can never work that one out.
The Bronx cheers.
The Bronx cheers. To be honest, I feel bad now because like it's all come out saying we shouldn't be doing. Like I was doing watching from home whenever he took a mark and like, but it's just basic skill errors. Like I don't understand. Like fair enough, you're not winning big 1-on-1 intercept marks, but like sometimes when you're just making basic handballs to nothing or like in the wrong spot completely, just out position, like it's just weird. But maybe there is something more to it, so I don't want to say too much.
I have a theory. Twins, where one of them is called Ben, get rid of the Ben. But then the Camporelli boys came in and
you got the
completely stuffed up my theory, but it was going really well.
Who are the other twins with Ben?
King.
Oh, okay.
To be fair, they're probably a bit more like for like. Yeah. But the Mackays really pushed that agenda for me. The Kings, I was like, well, Max definitely was, in the era of their draft days was going to be the better one.
Do you guys both think, before we wrap this up, do you guys think the fan bases maybe have a little bit to do with the culture a little bit? Because I feel like they've been... Niesha, yes.
Yes.
It's like I watched North Melbourne lose last night and that was pretty disappointing for North fans. But then as they were walking off, a lot of the fans were clapping, cheering. And I was like, I was surprised at that. I thought you'd be more upset.
Yeah.
But like Essendon and Carlton lose and their players, cop at social media.
Yeah.
Walking down the races. Like it can't be a great feeling.
And I cop it with the affiliation with the other Carlton fans, which is why I'm such a firm yes. I know earlier in the year you had one JJ Furno on the podcast and I go, I just don't want that guy representing me and my people. Love him to bits. But he's copying it here.
What are you talking about? JJ's there.
He would probably argue the same thing about me. So get him back on. We can do something with that.
Look.
But there are fans out there that they go from before the game.
Yeah.
We're on, so into it, so happy. And then I look around, halfway through the fourth quarter, stadium is empty. 82,000 people there at the start of the fourth quarter. 30,000 when the siren goes.
I'm still shocked you took a shot at JJ here. Have you met Kendo? Because Kendo's probably there.
I haven't.
Yeah, look, I might have to get Kendo on the podcast and you might change your mind a little bit. Let's move on to
Let's
move on to my topic here. West Coast, all right, guys?
Yeah.
So here's my controversial take, and I think West Coast need to do everything possible to win the wooden spoon this year. And I know tankings are kind of a taboo kind of topic because no one wants to see anybody tank. But realistically, you know, high-profile teams in like the NBA, like Oklahoma City, did the same thing. They got rid of every senior talent, just relied on the draft, played the kids, finished on the bottom, and now they're the favourites for the NBA championship, you know, 4 to 5 years later. So I feel like that's what West Coast need to do.
Okay, so say they do that. When they do go to the draft, what do they need?
What do they need?
Player? Yeah.
Honestly, the best player in the draft.
Just the best player?
Yeah, best player. Anybody for their midfield, because their midfield is atrocious.
Yep.
Their back line is literally a one-man show with Jeremy McGovern. Forward line is good.
Yep.
That's probably their one strength. But I will say, look, we've already seen the controversy with Oscar Allen this week as well. I mean, Oscar Allen leaves on big money for a big contract. That's a compensation pick. So if you get pick 1, Oscar Allen leaves, you get pick 2.
Yeah.
Right? Look, a lot of us talk about Harley Reid. Let me ask you guys, do you guys think Harley Reid is going to stay with West Coast long term?
Sorry, Dad, if you're watching, but I think Harley Reid's gone. He's a big West Coast man. And I think he's gone. But again, if they can get something in return, I think it'll help them because I think you're right. Harley Reid does need someone. He's not like he's not going to be a 30 possession guy. He needs someone in there who can consistently feed him the ball on the outside for him to be damaging.
Yep.
So I don't see that happening right now. So yeah.
Niesha?
I think it's not a secret that Harley Reid might have a bit of an ego, and that's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
You need to have that confidence and to back yourself, particularly when there's, you know, it's the people around him that have given him that ego and that are feeding that ego. But if, you know, they have to keep him happy to stay there. And I don't think with the trajectory that his ego is on that they're going to be able to keep him happy and over there.
Yeah. And his body language isn't great, to be honest. So
matches what I'm saying.
Do you think, Niesha, though, at a club where they were winning and Harley Reid was like the icing on the top, like he wasn't the main guy, everyone would be applauding that ego and saying like, oh, West Coast are winning, he's doing real well, and like he's carrying on a bit because they're winning, it wouldn't matter? Or do you think it's just because the way they're losing?
The way they're losing, but it seems to be separate from how the rest of the playing group are reacting. Okay. So there's like a separation already between him and everyone else out there. If they're winning, I think, you know, you don't always see these negative emotions come out. So it's probably harder to demonstrate how people will react because I don't even think his actions and reactions would be there to begin with. You know, if they're winning and he's happy and he's, you know, getting spoken about in a positive light.
Yeah.
And also take consideration, I'm pretty sure he's dating Yasmin Duursma.
He is, yes.
So and she's playing for Calrton at the moment. So, I mean, there's more factors to come home more than anything. Yeah. And I'm saying, like, look, if Richmond is the team that ends up with the wooden spoon, like most people think, pick one for Harley Reid and something else is not a bad deal as well. And then and the other thing is, like, this draft we're coming into isn't as strong as last. Last year was a draft that you had to kind of buy into. And West Coast traded out, really. Pick 3 pushed out to 13 or whatever it was. And I feel like it's less about having first rounders and more about having a pick in the top 5 or 6 picks, really. So I think that's important for him. The other thing is the Chad Warner off it all. Yeah. Because if Chad Warner wants to come over, he's not a free agent. Yeah. So it's there's 2 options here where you either got to trade a couple of first rounders, which you don't really want to do as West Coast because you're trading away your future again.
Exactly,
Yeah, but what do you think the price is? Because I reckon it's 3 first rounders maybe.
It has to be for Warner, I think.
Yeah.
I think so too.
Exactly. And then all of a sudden, you know, all the first rounders you're getting, you're trading back. I don't think they can afford to go for Chad Warner. Yeah. But the positive is if they do finish on wooden spoon, if they can somehow get him over to the preseason draft, I don't know how Chad would feel about, you know, his team getting shafted a little bit like that. But look, they've got to be ruthless because they need some talent in there.
Stranger things have happened.
Yeah, exactly. So look, that's where I sit with that. And I'm glad Mickey's not on the episode this week because he might have some choice words. He gets very riled up when we mention anything West Coast.
I'd love to have this conversation again a little later in the season as well. It's a long season. Well, what are we at? Round 4?
What do you think might change later in the season?
I just think, you know, reevaluate, see where they're at. Am I expecting wins on the board? Not a significant amount, no. So I think naturally whether they would, you know, had it in their mind to tank or not, that might just happen.
Yeah.
However, you know, if they do get something rolling and they're starting to see components of what they're working on in training coming out in their games, and maybe that does lead to a couple of wins and they don't get the wooden spoon, but, you know, they're probably still going to be in that bottom 3 regardless. Do you stop that progression and say, no, like, don't take the 4 points? Maybe not.
what's it called? The other thing is, I feel like with the way the list is, I don't think they can really be successful. And I feel like Andrew McQualter's come into that coaching gig, and it might turn into what Calrton was for a few years in Melbourne. So I feel like that's like, don't go near that. I think that's why like guys like Dean Cox were like,
Nah, I don't want to bar.
not involved. Don't want to be involved. All right, guys. Sorry, Niesha.
The boys.
Look, it's a topic I want to kind of go over personally, and I don't know if it's as interesting to everybody else as it is to me, but I'm kind of always keeping an eye on the Tassie Boys in the competition and trying to figure out whether they're going to stay, what the new Tassie list is going to look like when they come into the competition in 2028. So I've got some players, some Tassie Boys on different teams, and you tell me if they're going to, and assuming that like Tassie's probably going to offer them more money, more years than they're possibly going to get in their current deals. Their cap space is a lot bigger, and they've probably got a lot of draftees they're going to be paying minimum salaries to. So you tell me, are these guys staying? Let's start with your mob, Niesha, and Lockie Cowan.
I think he'll go.
You think he'll go?
I think he'll go because, with the names surrounding him on the current Calrton list, he's not going to get huge money where he is. So that, and also I have a very far-fetched connection to the family. One of the younger cousins is at the school my sister teaches at, and they just seem like a very, very, very close family. So he does have some family in Melbourne, but you've got to assume that the immediate family he'd be much closer with. So I think that really will play a factor for him, along with the money, along with the chance to, make some history, put your name.
I've been talking to some Calrton fans and they absolutely love him.
I love him.
Yeah, good player,
Good boy.
good off the halfback.
Yeah.
Look, so Lockie Cowan going. Collingwood, Jeremy Howe and Brodie Myercheck, do you think their careers will extend up to 2028?
Well, I think if they give him enough years, I think they'll go, especially like Myercheck and any other club. I don't think anyone would be interested.
Yeah.
Not sure who Collingwood's draft, like a young talent in the forward line is there. So he's always had a spot, but he's always a footballer.
You need some of those older heads as well.
Around,
if it progresses your career or keeps it going, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
For those older boys.
I suppose, how long the deal that they offer would be the major factor.
It depends, like if they're ready to pull up the boots and maybe just go another year.
Exactly.
I don't think I see how playing that far into the future. So that'll be an interesting one.
It'll be an interesting one. Well, Collingwood is sort of taking that Geelong model now, where they're just going. They're just keeping players based on ability, not on age. So which I like. Yeah, I'm all for. Look, I think this bloke's gone, and I think he's already made that kind of indicator, but Alex Pearce, captain of Fremantle.
But what makes you say he's already gone?
Well, he only signed an extension up until 2028, and I think that was I'm going.
Captain of the club?
I think he'll potentially, there's one more name I've got on this list. They could potentially be the inaugural captain, but he'll definitely be in the mix, I think so. But I think he's gone, I don't know.
I'm not going to argue with you, Jamie.
Yeah, not going to argue with me. Lockie Weller at the Suns.
I think he's gone. He's not getting that much opportunity at the Suns. He's been injured a lot though.
It's one of those things with the Suns where I feel like if they are up and coming this year, and they're going to be in that window for a little while, whether they are able to salute and win a flag, I feel like that might play a slight thing. Because he's got time on his career, so he could kind of play a few more years at the Suns and then end up possibly down there because he's on a big contract as well.
I don't know if the Suns are pushing this year, if he's like in the main mix either.
Yeah. I agree. And the thing with Tassie is that they'll be a little bit like Gold Coast was early, where they'll take anyone who kind of wants to come to the club.
Yeah, of course.
Because I don't think that's, for me, not really a destination kind of club, especially early days. James Leake up at the Giants. He's an interesting one because he can't really break into the side.
That team. He was on my Supercoach bench again. And he's getting not picked, and then so I think anyone not getting picked and you offer him enough of a long-term contract or longevity, job security. Yeah, I think if it was me, I'd go. Yeah, I think you have to, realistically. Here's a big one, Colby McKercher.
Oh, yeah, this is the one. This is like the poster boy at the moment for this whole conversation. Again, North's performance is going to weigh a massive factor in this as well.
I don't actually think it will. I think it's more the fact that he's playing more off the halfback.
Where do you think? Where does he want to play midfield?
Well, he got drafted as a midfielder. Okay. Yeah. So I think like there's more prestige playing in the midfield as well, and I feel like if Tassie offers him that, I think you have to go to a degree, especially on the money, because I don't think anything North Melbourne can offer him will match what Tassie can.
Even through the game on Saturday night against the Swans, I think you were saying, just put him in the midfield now. Yeah. Like they're already losing this game. Yeah. Like, just mix it up. Let's see if this does work better than other options that they've got through.
He hasn't had a proper crack. And look, I think LDU's leaning towards re-signing.
Yeah.
But if he doesn't for some reason, then you haven't really given him the time to develop. And you got Wardlaw coming possibly back in next week as well. So
where is he sitting in that order right now? If you've got Wardlaw, Powell, LDU,
I don't know.
Shoudl.
I don't think they see him in that midfield mix
At
for
all.
whatever
They're-
reason.
they're-
He's a really good user of the ball as well.
He's an elite kick.
Yeah. So
I suppose they want him to have it in space.
yeah, it's a bit of an interesting one with him because I thought he'd be pushed in there. I mean, I thought the future would be LDU, him, and Wardlaw. And then you got Shoudl as well. So again, they're almost falling into that Essendon trap of having too
I was
many
just about to
midfielders.
say, I was just like, you got Powell playing there the most, I reckon, right
but
now.
Powell's having a great year as it is.
well,
So Simpkin as well, the captain.
Yeah.
I mean,
And I know particularly at the start of probably last year, our conversation was name a North Melbourne defender. And we know they've had some things change. Charlie Compton's, come along in leaps and bounds, which has been great. So maybe they're trying to plug up some holes in that defence by putting, such an elite ball user back there and going, look, we do have, a big name in our back six, but is that suitable for the team or the individual?
You just wonder if it becomes more of like an Andy McGrath situation where he was drafted as a midfielder as well and end up on the back line for his career.
It's one name I didn't mention earlier, but another name I just can't say.
All right, guys. Look, there's a quartet of them at Richmond, at Tigerland.
Yes.
Got Samuel Banks, Toby Nankervis, who's another one who could possibly be that inaugural captain.
Yeah.
Ryan Mansell and Seth Campbell. I think Seth Campbell will be very high on the wish list for
I
Tassie.
think so too. There's some interesting names. I actually went to the Richmond game on Saturday against the Lions, and whilst obviously they got beaten, it wasn't probably the big blowout that
people thought.
Particular Lions fans would have wanted and expected going in. And Seth Campbell's really been tearing it up this year. As much as you can for Richmond
as a forward.
Yeah.
Every opportunity
And you
he
think
gets, he's creating something.
You think of from Tassie's point of view, like all these guys are going to be like 4, 5 year, 5-year players, by that time. So it's kind of prime for him to really make a push for it. Nankervis is the one where I think he might actually potentially stay just because he's
a bit older.
Yeah, and he's played in some flags and he's just really more integral to Richmond.
Do you think in 4 to 5 years Richmond are contending again? That would be the thing that would, I guess, hold them back.
Look, it looks like 4 years is like your best case scenario.
Yeah.
Really?
Yep.
I might say 5 or 6 for him.
5 or 6,
Yeah, just because I don't think the older talent they have is necessarily capable of sustaining it.
Yeah, until these younger
term.
ones come up. Yeah.
So I feel unless they get some good free agents come in.
Yeah, this is true. I just think like they're so young.
Yeah.
And even chatting to a friend of mine who has some connections to these players, just they're still boys. They are still boys, and
Are we allowed to ask what the connection is?
they're hosting one of the Richmond draftees is living at their house, and she'll go out to hang out with us. And she said, "Oh, I left him at home tonight. He's teaching himself how to make a pasta bake." Things like that. They don't know how to operate as an adult yet, so just give them some time to figure out that aspect of their life, and it does translate into a professional athlete. But let the man cook his pasta bake for a year.
So is that why Christian Petrarca is so good at footy?
Yeah, there you go.
Sure, we'll put it down to that.
Oh,
All right, let's finish this off. St Kilda's got Jimmy Webster and Ari Schoenmakers. I think Ari Schoenmaker's going to be an absolute star.
Yeah, I think he's an elite. What is he? He's a good kick, isn't he?
Good kick, Backline, tall prospect. Key defenders don't grow on trees.
Exactly, yeah.
Big slider in the draft. He was supposed to be in the top 20 and did some off-field stuff. That kind of made him drop, and St Kilda picked up a steal, but he can't break to the team as well.
Yeah.
And Western Bulldogs have got Liam Jones, who might be a bit too on.
I think he'd be done.
But Riley Sanders is probably the other one.
Yeah, I think he's one. I think he's got bevered too many times.
Yeah, a lot of these boys like McCurcher and Sanders, I'm pretty sure they have moved over to Melbourne for the schooling, so they are embedded in the lifestyle a little bit.
Yeah.
But I mean, the money.
I feel like Sanders
comes and
when that year's come, Sanders could be like really hitting his straps.
Exactly.
And he could be like the poster boy.
Yeah.
To come over to
along
Tassie.
with McCurcher, and
I think so too.
I think they've got enough space to probably offer these guys $1 million a year, and I think that's too big to kind of refute, in my opinion.
I think with Sanders as well, it was well spoken about last year that he didn't look happy being that bloke that got pulled off or starting sub. How many full games did he get the opportunity to
It can change because obviously this year he's kind of broken in.
Yeah.
Look, guys, let's move on to our shake and bake segment, guys. So give a shake to something you like, something or a bake to something you don't like. So I don't know who wants to go first.
I can start because
Yeah.
you can argue that I'm a little bit jealous off Geelong because of their sustained success, never having to rebuild. But Chris Scott and his ability just to make a mockery of the selection every Thursday with these late ins every week, playing like I don't know what he's trying to do. I mean, you can argue that they're winning, and there's no fines or repercussions for it. But every time he puts out a team, people under injury clouds, he makes a late change. Like, what's the point of even putting out the team? It doesn't. Again, it comes back to me playing Super Coach because you're killing me here every time. Like Sam DeConing this week, ruck time the first 3 weeks. All of a sudden, Reece Stanley, who I think shouldn't be playing either, coming back into the team, DeConing backline. Maybe to negate Gawn, but I'm not sure what it actually achieves. Maybe does he think Gawn prepares for a ruck matchup against SDK and then Stanley comes in?
Like a little bit of mind games.
And it just irritates me because Geelong's been so good for so long.
Yeah, so you're giving them a bake?
Giving them a bake, It's Chris Scott.
The other thing that annoys me with Geelong is their injury list sometimes. They put some dodgy short-term, medium term.
Exactly. So it's like they don't respect it. Like they're not doing the same things that other teams are doing, but there's no accountability. So obviously the AFL are not going to do anything, but there should be something, I think.
They play their own game, really, when it comes to this stuff.
Get their own home ground and everything. They win every week at.
Cheers for that, Niesha.
Do I go my shake or bake first? Because we've baked.
Well, you can do one. You can do both, or you can do one of each.
All right, I'll go with my shake. Thank you for the inspiration last night, Jamie. Riley Bice.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
So you called attention to it, and then that was the only player I watched for the remainder of the game. Obviously, the contest was out the window. But I think it also is down to Sydney and also teams like Geelong and maybe even sometimes Collingwood to a degree where they can identify a mature age, like fully built out body and just inject them into the side and they seamlessly fit into whatever game style. And it's not, we need like it seems like they've identified that person to slot in the character, seem to get around all the boys. And again, I'm very jealous because it seems like when Carlton would bring someone into the side, they're going to have like 4 or 5 terrible games before I actually start to go, oh, maybe there is something to this guy. But that being said, there's no kind of set solid game plan for them to just seamlessly get themselves involved in. So I think the way that those top sides are doing it with players, and obviously Riley Bice is the most recent example of many, just not only assisted the team, but also he shone himself. I want some stars to just walk into my side out of nowhere.
Look, lethal left boot. I thought he was best on ground, to be honest.
I thought so too.
He's highest ranked Sydney Swans player, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. Has a beautiful mo as well. Love it. Yeah.
Also in the Fremantle game late.
I just agreed with that. No, I hate the mo.
Nah, it's a beautiful mo.
I'm so off the facial hair this year. Oh gosh. Sidetrack.
All right. Did you guys have anything else you want to pull in for Shake or Bake before I go to
got
mine?
a real quick one on Jason Horne-Francis' attitude and and just the way he's been playing. Again,
just taking pot shots.
Taking pot shots as well. Again, because he's in my Supercoach team as well.
Everything Supercoach basically.
It has to be. It's my whole life revolves around the footy season. But yeah, I reckon he should be kicking on a lot more, especially with no Butters there. Had some really Dan games with lack of effort. Yeah. And obviously the Kane Corns is coming out, always spruiking him up. I don't think he's as good as he is right now. People thought he would be.
He's built like Dangerfield, but at the same time, he's
not using that.
Produced the same.
He hasn't got that same effort. Like you saw Danger on the Friday against Melbourne. He's 35 years old, but he was just dominating that game. Like every time he hits a contest, it's like he's going to get the ball and you can't tackle him. Yeah. Even at his age and that. But
look, I think Danger's like a different species compared to a lot of other footballers.
Sure is. I do have a bake as well. So I thought North were past this.
Okay.
I thought, what it ended up being like 70-odd point defeat at Marvel against an interstate side. Obviously, that side last year's minor premiers, Sydney can pull out a great win from anyway, as we clearly saw last night. But removing the opposition, I thought North were probably in a position where they wouldn't want to be suffering these major blowout wins anymore. Yeah. They've had, maybe 3 or 4 seasons like kind of dead on the bottom. Yeah. Only getting those wins against teams that are equally in that same bottom 3 bracket as them. But to transition out of that, you've got to stop those blowout losses and just got to move past it. I thought North were past it. Obviously, last night proved me wrong.
Yeah. Look, it's a bit harder for, I feel like, North in terms of like, I think they got one of the hardest draws in the league. I think they have a harder draw than Sydney does this year, which is pretty, and Sydney have a great marble record. Yeah. So, look, I'm hopeful they get up a little bit. But look, I'm going to move on to mine, and mine's a bake. And I think I've got a theme going with my bakes, because I went after Stephen Silvani a couple of weeks ago.
I would have jumped on that bandwagon with you.
Well, it seems to be like a bad dad kind of a bake, right? And and my eyes go to Brody Myercheck. Did you guys see the Collingwood theme song sung after the game?
No, what happened?
Well, Brody thought it'd be a good idea to bring Baby Arthur into the song.
I did see. I saw the footage of it.
Puts no earmuffs on the kid. He's like half asleep.
Yeah.
You know, and then the boys sing the song as loud as they possibly can. You know, he's absolutely traumatized, this baby, crying, wailing. The look on his face was atrocious. He's going to be hearing the Collingwood theme song in his nightmares. Like, absolutely, just Brody Myercheck gets a bake there. Gets a bake. Poor Arthur. Come on, get some earmuffs.
What age is appropriate, do you reckon?
Oh,
when they know the words and can sing along.
Oh, yeah, if they could maybe just walk, might be might be good. Or just listen to competition as well, the Collingwood there. So, yeah, a couple of nightmares there for Baby Arthur. But let's move on to wrap up the episode, guys.
Sorry.
Gather Round. All right, we got Gather Round, third annual year for Gather Round.
Yeah, number 3.
Look, I just want to go through a couple of matchups, and I want to firstly go to your mob.
Yep.
Blues versus West Coast. This is the week, surely.
You'd think. And if it's not, I don't think I'll be coming back here to talk to you, Jamie.
Let me ask you a serious question, though.
Yes.
If, let's say, the Blues don't get up against West Coast, do you think there's big implications for Michael Voss there?
I think so.
Yeah?
I think it's kind of what you alluded to earlier in the episode, Travis. It was...
Yep.
We need to see something from Michael Voss that goes, maybe this isn't exactly what I planned.
Yeah.
You know, maybe this isn't good.
Yeah.
Like, firstly, we want to see from the coach going, yep, this actually sucks.
Yeah.
Rather than going, no, like, I think we've played out games pretty well. Like, no, don't beat around the bush.
Yeah.
I need answers. I need to feel validated as a Carlton fan from the coach, because we're watching the same game.
Yeah.
Ultimately.
And
if he can't, you know, have some sort of flip or you know, that validation that fans all need right now.
Yeah.
He's
honestly, I'll be shocked.
He's under the pump.
I'll be shocked if Carlton don't get up by about 80 to 100.
80 to 100. Okay.
Purely on the basis that Jeremy McGovern's out
Mm.
and Harry Edwards is out.
Yeah.
I don't think they've got a backline. If Harry Mackay comes back in,
Yeah.
No.
I mean, I don't think anybody can stop them.
I think Ryan Marriott will be second tall almost or something like that, which is crazy when he was
big ask.
Forward.
Yeah.
Oscar Allen will have to go back again.
Yeah, so I can't see Blues losing this, but I'll...
But did you say that round one as well? Oh, opening round? Was
I guess. I mean, a lot of people probably say the same. But a couple of stats. So since 2014, the Blues are, I've forgotten the number. No, 2-7 at Adelaide Oval.
And the two were both last year.
Were they both last year?
Yeah, Gather Round and then Port later in the year.
There you go. And West Coast are 9-9, but I mean, I'm not too sure if we take that record in consideration. Blues have won the last 4 against the Eagles, and I quickly want to raise this with you. Because before we talk about the Hawks versus Port Adelaide, obviously a lot of backlash after that final last year. Yeah. And a lot of the Jack Ginnivan, commenting and just kind of riling up Port Adelaide. I want to point to Dan Gorringe or Richmond Gorringe or, you know what I mean? If you're a footy fan... I
believe now it is Richmond, Hawthorn, Bulldogs, Collingwood, Gorringe. With the blue hair. With the blue hair.
Look... Do you feel like, you know how you talk about riling up fans and players and teams and stuff like that? Do you think he's such a big negative for Carlton?
Oh, absolutely. For me, the amount of his videos that I get sent directly to me, thinking that maybe my thought process is anywhere aligned with this man, I don't want to see it. At the end of the game, when he's sitting there, with a clown wig on, crying his eyes out, then I go, okay, that's relatable content.
Yeah.
But pre-game, I don't need it. I don't need a Carlton fan out there promoting the fact that he might be hopeful this week. I don't need that.
The thing about it as well is sort of like he has all these caveats, like I'm going to change my name to Richmond if Carlton lose. I'm gonna dye my hair blue if Calrton lose, and it's sort of just like everybody wants Calrton to lose all of a sudden.
I was going to say, I think he's actually a genius, and it's gone to the point where I honestly think he's making that much money from Calrton losing that I think
think he wants it.
I actually deep down think he actually wants Calrton to lose, because everyone goes to him when Calrton lose to see his reactions, right?
Yeah.
And you would know this being in the content creation business, Jamie, that it's all about clicks and feeding. Like Kane Corns is a master at it as well.
Yeah.
That clickbait, that rage bait or whatever. As you said, he's got all these little caveats that when they lose, he's going to do something.
Yep.
I wasn't even following him for a while, but then I've just got him sent that many times that when Calrton loses as well. That I'm like, actually, I got to follow this guy now because it's interesting. And I think he gets way more clicks and makes more money when Calrton loses.
But I think like even teams and players, they see all this content as well,
Yeah,
so
100%.
they get riled up just as much as anybody.
Yeah.
But yeah, look, I just an observation I kind of made, and I was kind of like, I think as long as this guy keeps going, I don't know if Calrton's going to be successful.
Yeah.
You always need to start a petition going, Niesha.
Oh,
Get him off YouTube.
I'll maybe leave, JJ Furno can lead that charge.
JJ's taking a lot of hits, so okay.
It's a good thing.
All right, Hawthorn versus Port. How do you guys think this one will go? Because it's going to close out, gather round, so they're hoping for it's going to be a
massive
big kind
thing.
of.
I actually do think Hawthorn will win.
Yeah.
Just based off how Port have started this year.
Yeah.
You should be smashing Essendon the way they were playing last week.
Yeah.
And they just scraped through. I know Butters is back, but not sure where Port's at the moment. But again, sometimes with Ken Inkley, it's like they've had their biggest wins after like a period of losing.
Yeah.
Because I think they do love that guy. A lot of the players really do play for him.
I'll give Ken that especially.
Yeah.
I feel like when he has a bad week or
They
the
rally.
media comes from him hard, they do rally behind him, which you can't say for a lot of coaches.
Yeah.
Look, we'll move over to Adelaide and Geelong are playing on the Thursday night, I think it is.
Yep.
Yeah.
Both, I looked up the games records at Adelaide Oval for both teams. Both have won 57% of their games at Adelaide Oval since 2013.
Interesting.
So, look, Geelong's a quality side. Which way are you guys leaning up for that game?
I think at the start of the year, everyone would have probably said, yep, Geelong probably got this one covered. This one, there's always games at the start of the season where you highlight on the calendar and go, that one's going to be a cracker. I think leading into this week, I think this has the potential to be a match of the round.
Yeah.
With Adelaide, obviously controversial game from the week before. They're going to want to come out and have a bit of vindication with the way they go about it. So I think they might have a little bit more to play for here. So I'm going with the Crows.
Yeah.
Yep. I think the same thing. I think if it's obviously at Geelong, I just book in Geelong.
Yeah.
The fact that it's Adelaide makes it game of the round because it's in Adelaide.
And it's not only Adelaide, it's gather round in Adelaide. You know what I mean?
Exactly, yeah.
They're going to be absolutely wild.
I do
the
think
fans.
though Geelong, it's got that culture. I'm going to go for Geelong. I think they'll end up winning.
You think Geelong will
I think
gonna
Geelong will win. There's something
okay.
with Geelong when you don't expect them to win.
You don't expect them?
And then they just win.
I'm starting to get the feeling that Geelong might just be a little bit off, just not their best anymore.
Yeah.
I could be
finding
wrong.
them hard to tip this year.
Yeah. I thought like the old Geelong would have put away Brisbane with that kind of a lead. Look, I'm leaning Adelaide, so I think Adelaide. And to wrap it up, your mob, Travis, Essendon versus Melbourne. I want to talk about that. How do you feel heading into this one? Are you confident?
No, I am more confident just because how bad Melbourne's been.
Okay,
Not about how good Essendon is. Melbourne, something's not right there either as well with
Yeah.
Melbourne. I don't know what it is. This whole love culture that
one thing I did like hearing about Melbourne is that they had that, and you hear clubs doing this where the players have these like honesty chats behind the scenes, and I feel like Hawthorn did it after the Gold Coast loss last year, and it might have not resulted in wins straight away, but it kind of did eventually. So
I'm not sure if you saw Petrarca after the Geelong game, like he was distraught. Like if they're gonna like rally around that and like build on that, I think Melbourne are a better team than Essendon right now. Hands down. But
definitely.
there's something not clicking with them. That's the reason they're not playing well. It will be a lot closer than I think.
And like if you had to lean which way
I wouldn't tip Melbourne, but Essendon did beat them last year. I remember in Gather End.
I was looking at the stats and just like current form and everything. And I was like, there's no reason for me to tip Melbourne.
There's no reason. But it's just the fact
I feel like they are a better side. But there's no reason for me. And Essendon have at least given me a reason. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What about you, Niesha?
And you already pointed out the fact that the game that Essendon did win, maybe it wasn't off the back of Essendon's efforts, but the demise of the other side.
Yeah.
So if we're looking at it from that perspective and where Melbourne are at the moment, I'll probably back the Bombers.
The Bombers? I think I've got Bombers tipped at the moment,
I'm
but
the pessimistic
it
supporter.
could change, All right, thank you guys for tuning in. Big thank you to Travis, Niesha for coming on. Look, we've got episodes weekly on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts, basically. Again, big thank you guys. Good luck to your teams for next
Thanks for
week.
having us, Jamie.
And we'll catch you next time. See you later.
Cool.